Lord, thank you for these men and women. God, I just thank you for the opportunity that we have to really do ministry together. And God, even though we may not be in the same location, God, you've given us this avenue to be able to join with each other, to be challenged by each other. And God, I thank you. God, it's hard to say, but I thank you for this season in the life of our churches. You have stretched us, you have changed us, you have shown us ways to do ministry that maybe we have never thought about. And so, God, I pray that you will just continue to challenge us and make us better, make us more effective, make us better users of our time, of the resources that are available to us. God, just let us see that there are opportunities for ministry right now that we have never had before, and we may never have again. And so, God, just let us take advantage of those and make an impact for your kingdom and for the gospel. God, I'm thankful for the things that I have learned personally in joining together in this group, and God, just the ways that you're making us better during this season of ministry that we have. And so, God, I pray that today, as we have conversations and discussions, that there would be some wonderful things that are shared that would just help us to once again be more effective ministers of the gospel in this time. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, guys. So let's start off. I put the topics in the group a couple of days ago. So I'm just going to kind of go through these one by one. So let's start this week by talking about kind of some high lows from yesterday. We don't have to camp here too long, but kind of let's start with what went well, what went poorly, or what would you guys struggle with yesterday. John, I think you're fairly new with us. You want to talk about your church and where you are and what happened at your church yesterday?
Sure. So I'm actually in Parkersburg, West Virginia. The church name is Calvary Parkersburg. We just changed kind of from Calvary Memorial Church. We've actually been doing. I'm kind of over the media department here, and we've been doing drive-in church. We started on Easter Sunday. Kind of got rained out a little bit, but it was all right. And so it was big success. So we said, let's continue doing it for the next couple of weeks during all this. But then we don't really have the equipment to bring our live stream and keep the quality and bring it out in the parking lot. So we've pre-recorded our live stream. So we're playing that live while everybody else is out in the parking lot, which made Easter week, leading up to Easter, really stressful. But people seem to like it, and they like the whole drive-in church.
What's some things that you guys learned from yesterday that you might implement in the weeks to come?
Well, I mean, just maybe getting the word out there better. I know we've been slacking a little bit social media-wise, getting drive-in church, but just kind of, attendance was a little bit down after Easter, but wasn't too bad. I think we had about 70 or 80 people there as opposed to over 100 on Easter. So
now, you're doing drive-in church and you're live streaming it as
yeah.
well. What has your attendance been on the live stream? Have you seen a increase?
It's normally around like anywhere between 20 to 50 around there. So it hasn't really dropped too much since then.
Okay. All right. Who else? Somebody else want to jump in? John Mark, you want to jump in and talk about yesterday?
Highs for yesterday, our numbers didn't dip too bad from Easter, so we definitely had some new people join us back again. Lows, the crew got too comfortable with live streaming and missed some cues, and there was like one awkward moment. So got to keep them not getting too comfortable with what's going on.
Did you guys do, refresh me, you guys do a live stream or are you pre-recorded?
Yeah, we're live. Yep.
What brought you to that decision from your church?
In our part of the country, the internet is very reliable. I don't know if we're on a different server for Vimeo and Facebook and YouTube. We haven't had the issues everyone else has been having. So we've just maintained the live aspect of it. We're not under any major restrictions as far as how many people we can have at the building for essential volunteers, et cetera. So it's just been easier workload to do it live.
Gotcha. Jessica, what about you guys? I don't know if you can hear me or jump in here, but how have you guys been the last couple of weeks?
Hey, Carl. Yeah, I can hear you. I just was driving, but getting some groceries. So I jump in. Yeah, we had some major, we had some issues the first couple of weeks of streaming, and so we've opted for a pre-record the last couple of weeks, including Easter, just because going into Easter week and Holy Week, we had a ton of stuff that we were producing and trying to get out. So yeah, Sunday has gone really well. We've started kind of building a volunteer team to help with online hosting. So we've used online church platform with a Facebook and a YouTube premiere setting. And people have seemed to fight through the awkwardness of the initial couple weeks of it and really latched into enjoying the conversation, engaging in that, which has been really cool. So other than I had a computer go down the week of Easter, my main editing computer, that was a little terrible, but made it through that. So Sunday was relatively smooth.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in? High lows from yesterday?
I'm going to unmute myself there. One of the churches that I work with has been experimenting with Zoom, broadcasting from Zoom into Facebook Live so that they can have their worship leader at one house and their pastor at another house and so on. And one big win for us this past week was that the pastor used for the first time Speedify. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Speedify or not, but it's this great third-party plugin that they've got a COVID-19 special right now. I think that they're charging $2 or $3 a month. It's usually $10 a month, but you can take your cell phone and plug it into your computer and share the signal from your cellular service and your Wi-Fi. And if you had like a mobile hotspot, it'll let you combine everything into one beefy signal. And that's made all the difference for them. They were having trouble getting Zoom to connect to Facebook because their signal wasn't strong enough. And now that they've implemented Speedify, it's gone flawlessly. So I throw that out there for anybody that's had any kind of connection issues. It's a reliable and a pretty inexpensive service.
Can you put the link in the chat for us?
Yeah.
Chance. Awesome. Okay. So anybody else high low from yesterday? Anybody want to jump in?
Everything was pretty solid with us. We pre-recorded, which is pretty standard. That's what we've been doing ever since all this happened. I mean, everything was pretty solid. I think our attendance was a little bit down from Easter, nothing crazy. I did notice a positive note. It was, I mean, whatever the number was when we started was the number when we did our closing prayer. So that was really encouraging to see people latch from beginning to end. That was great. It seemed that everything on the Facebook end coming from Vimeo seemed to be working well. YouTube Live seemed to be doing okay yesterday. I think yesterday was a pretty steady day across the streaming world as far as I know, unless anyone saw anything different. I think it was pretty standard, pretty solid, but everything was good for us.
Jordan, I think me and you were talking about this. I'd love to pose the question to the group. How do you guys measure views? Is it, the highest views that you get? Do you measure people going on and off? Jordan, where'd you guys land? And I'd love to pose that question to the group.
So at the beginning of the message, whatever the number of connections we have on each platform, we add those together and multiply it by a factor of 2, and we count that as our attendance. I think the key is just to stay consistent, whatever you're going to do each week, and then you're really just comparing the week over week if you're increasing or decreasing.
How about you other guys? How have you measured attendance on the stream?
We haven't. We just kind of, it's so hard, and it's so, you know, having people come in and out, in and out, in and out. And, you know, I'd love to say that, you know, we have people that are watching through the entire service, but we see people drop in and drop out.
Yeah.
And I do love, though, the idea of the comparison, because I mean that comparison at a certain point in the service would allow us to have a level of, okay, we know what it was last week, we know what it is this week. So I appreciate that just from the perspective of the engagement. So that's a great. I don't know that I would necessarily. So I'm Baptist. We have an annual church profile that we turn in. We would not put these numbers on that because it's either going to be high or low. And honestly, I don't care.
Right.
I just, you know, I want to make a difference in people's lives. And so it doesn't really matter as far as the attendance, you know, numbers, but I love the comparison because it just shows us if we're being consistent. I like that.
Right. Good. Anybody else want to jump in here?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
How many of you are doing a room host or a chat room host or anything as part of your experience? And are people engaging with that person? Because I wondered if that helps with retention some, you know, people popping in and leaving.
Yeah, if I could jump on here. Our engagements are probably 3 times the number of viewers. So we're getting on average about 3 to 4 comments or likes per viewer. And the hosts make all the difference, we think, especially with retention. It'll dip. We won't have as much engagement during the middle portion of the message because everybody's watching actively. And then when we get towards the tail ends of that, people will start lighting the comments up again.
So I saw this in a Facebook post I put on maybe yesterday that somebody had an idea of doing some giveaways for like the most engaged viewer. Have you guys done anything like that?
Oh, but that's awesome.
Yeah. I asked them, how'd you measure that? And they basically said it's you know, comments and likes and shares. So that might be a way that you can encourage more
Biggest
engagement.
watch party.
To do some type of giveaway.
Hey, that's
I don't wanna
smart. Biggest
encourage
watch
a lot
party.
of comments that are off topic, but still.
Hey, we've seen something kind of cool at our church. So, I mean, obviously, like with the YouTube moderator and on, you know, Vimeo's embed has got like a chat feature, and that's cool. But on Facebook, we've seen a really, really encouraging thing where it's almost as if the whole kind of core of our church is moderating. So there's like 10 or 15 core people, I'd say, that are every single time someone comments, they're, hey, glad you're here. Hey, glad you're here. And it's just, that's been really, really cool to see. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that, at least on your Facebook live streams or not, but there's been some really core people that have just been stepping up big time.
Yeah, I've seen that too. We saw that on the Easter Across America thing that we didn't even ask people to do that, but there were a few people that were like, "Hey, glad you're here. Hey, where are you watching from?" That sort of thing. So you might have people that jump in kind of just that they want to do it, and you might see that person one week and then contact them during the week and give them a leadership role, like give them a host role the next week because they've taken the initiative.
Yeah, and Carl, I jumped in here. I saw something someone posted on Facebook this morning, like how you can get volunteers engaged. But like, I mean, you get everyone in your church who's like got some sort of commitment on there commenting, because stuff will sometimes fly real quick. So if you have people that are helping engage with what's going on online, that's a real cool way to plug people in.
Yeah, it is.
Who maybe don't have the ability to do anything else.
And encouraging people to host watch parties is a huge deal too. I mean, well, Carl had me do a little thing for the website that I put a little video together on how to do it in 4 steps. And I saw this past weekend more people doing that than I had in the past. And it's a great way for people to be able to share what's happening at their church, and it requires very little technical expertise. And it's probably easier than asking someone in person to go to church with them, you know, to host a watch party.
Yeah, it is. Good point. All right, so let's kind of shift to Vimeo. Justin, I don't know if you want to talk about the platform at all, and then we just open up for questions for live stream. So and just some Q&A for you. So Justin, you want to talk about your role at Vimeo and what you guys are doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vimeo, I know a lot of you guys know Vimeo is like the VOD, the excellent VOD platform, and that's, I think, kind of what our image has been for a long time. But we acquired Livestream, which I know some of you guys were users, and some of you guys are familiar with that, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we're making a massive concerted effort to be a huge player, and I guess in the faith space. So we're already the largest streamer in the faith world, as far as like number of ministries that are on our platform, but we've never had anybody really focused on that. So that's been my role, is to come on and strategize with churches and to kind of help them get up in streaming. But I mean, y'all feel free to reach out to me, even if you're not using Vimeo. Just anything I can do to help on the live streaming end. I know there's probably some tech guys in here that are from a tech side a lot smarter than me, but just from a strategic end, love to help in any way. If anyone needs help streaming or is looking at Vimeo, y'all can feel free to reach out to me directly as well. And I'll put my email and my cell number in the chat.
Who was that? I know there's a couple of people last week. They were like, man, I wish we could have some more Q&A time with Justin. So what questions do you have?
One of the features we really have been using here recently, because the one downside we're having right now with our live streams on Vimeo is that we can't trim them after the service. And so that's been a little hard, but there's an awesome feature on the URLs that we can add some short code to it, so that from our website where it's embedded, the link to it will start the video at a certain spot. Is there a short code to have it stop at a certain spot?
You won't need that anymore. Trimming's coming ASAP.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I have a lot of people would be super happy about that.
Yeah, trimming and DVR will both be available on the platform very, very soon. So I don't have like an official date, but in our meetings they said very soon. So I'll let you guys know when I hear.
You need beta testers. We're here.
Absolutely.
All right, what else you got? So Justin's been around at Vimeo and also a couple of different streaming platforms. So he is definitely the streaming guy. So what struggles have you had from a streaming standpoint? Is there anything else we can bounce off of him?
One of the things that we have found, so we have a Roku channel, and it's picking up our church online stream basically. I think that's how it gets connected. One of the things that we have found with that Roku channel is, for some of our members, it is the easiest way, because they're used to navigating Roku, and so for them to go onto our Roku channel and grab the stream, that's good. I'm just curious if Vimeo, I know that Vimeo has a Roku channel. I know that you can, or an app, whatever you want to call it. Is that something that people could set a bookmark or something, so that, I mean, just an ease of access? I've got a lot of senior adults. I've got a lot of people that are going to struggle with, if there's 4 clicks, they're going to say, yeah, I'm not doing that. But if there's 1 or 2 things that they can do, it's one of the reasons why we're really pushing our church online, because it's, if you can get that one link, then everything goes to where it needs to go.
Yeah, so kind of a twofold thing. One, yeah, apps are huge. I forget what the stat is, but I think it was like average view time on social media was like 3 or 4 minutes. And average time in a Roku or an Apple TV app was over 25. So there's a huge push for that. And what our design and kind of what we're pushing with the ministries is our OTT platform, which is where we actually build the app in-house and supply that for the ministry. So so it wouldn't be through the Vimeo app. You'd actually have your own custom branded app through Vimeo, and then all of the streaming, it'll simulcast. So if you're streaming with Vimeo, it'll go to your YouTube Live, your Facebook Live, it'll go to your church online, and it'll go straight to your app. And all the video on demand will store in there as well. And I think two good examples for you to look at: Hillsongs we built, and TBNs. So both of those on Roku or Apple TV were built by Vimeo. So that'd be like a good example for you to look at.
One more question. So the way that we are actually, so we're doing the simulated live where we have everything recorded. We have a nice, video file. We know exactly what it's going to look like. But what we're doing right now, and our admin guy is not here, so he would be able to answer this question better. But basically, what we're doing is we're going to our church, hitting play on that video, uploading it to whatever broadcasting, and then people are downloading it. It's working. We've not had a problem. In fact, we've not had a glitch since we've been doing that. But I also recognize that we're depending on two different streams: our upload speed and their download speed, as far as any types of. So I think what I heard you say was you can pre-upload to Vimeo, and then make it so that it's kind of a. Do you understand where I'm going?
Yeah. So there's kind of like a simulated live aspect with most streaming provide. What I'm doing personally is Vimeo gives you Live Stream Studio, which is like a software encoder. It's very, very similar to Wirecast, and I'm just dumping the media in there and just streaming it that way. The other way that I know a lot of guys in here have been doing premieres, or at least for the social feed. So they're doing like YouTube and Facebook premieres, which is another great way because you're really not dependent on the upload stream. It's just dependent on their download because it's a VOD file. So, but I know a lot of people have been having problems on Facebook Premiere. YouTube Premiere for me for 5 weeks has been golden. I've had zero issues, but I know some people have been having problems with Facebook. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. I had issues one week where my Premiere, it went like 15 minutes in and then looped back to the beginning and just continuously looped and would only go 15 minutes. And it was some kind of Facebook bug. So that's why I started doing full simulated live. Unless I have a power outage in my house, I know I'm good to go.
Go ahead, John Mark.
So, Justin, one of the things that we rolled out for Easter was we virtualized Journey to the Cross, which is an event we do. Loaded on a showcase, which is great. However, we didn't have any capture portal for that. Is there any option on the video on demand platform, which is great, to have almost a free release so I can take advantage of all that capture portal without having to charge people for on demand video?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I need to ask someone on the VOD team.
Because right now I can charge 99 cents, but I felt bad because it's like,
Yeah.
This is a free thing. I don't want to charge you. Yeah, that would be an awesome feature request.
Yeah, man. Okay, cool. Awesome. And I'll give you I'll also post an email in here for feature request stuff. If you are a Vimeo client, that you can like send stuff to us, and we, all the features that we build more than likely come from, like I said, we have more churches streaming on our platform than anybody. They are always telling us what they like to see, what's next. That's why trimming and DVR are coming, because we've been continuously hearing from churches, we want this, so we're building it.
Anybody else live stream questions? Jason, do you want to, I know we talked a little bit about the people's upload and download and kind of the weighing the options of live stream versus pre-record. Do you want to talk through any of that?
I can certainly speak to it a little. I've been offering a webinar on telling the old story in a new way. The idea being that we have to translate. I framed the whole thing around the premise of taking a book and making it a film. The idea that when you take a book and you make it a film, you have to consolidate, adapt, reimagine, and so on. So one of the things I've talked about is sort of 3 different models for how you do worship, one of which is live streaming. Of course, it's happening in the moment. But as you all said, that there's kind of 3 issues that you really you don't have a ton of control over. Your upload is one, the platform is the second one, and then download is the third one. And the upside of live streaming is that you create kind of an event and people show up for the event because it's happening live in that moment. There's an excitement about that and the chat and so on. The downside, of course, is that you have all 3 of those factors you have to contend with: how quick your stream is going up, what's happening with the platform like Facebook or YouTube, and then the download. Of course, the second one is pre-recorded or premiered. And I hadn't heard about, I think I had heard your story about, Justin, about the 15-minute loop somewhere else. I heard somebody else had that, either you or someone was referring to you or heard it somewhere else. Of course, with premiered worship, you get to eliminate the upload problem. You lessen the problem because it's already on the server when you've uploaded it. So you really have the downstream. So there is some advantage to doing pre-loaded worship. The downside is that you can't interact in real time. I've been seeing people sometimes refer in the chat, like, hey, Jessica, I can see that you've joined us in the chat, and, being able to actually talk to the people and react in real time, which is an advantage. But you can still do that in the chat. You just can't do it live on camera. And then the third option I've been talking about is kind of a hybrid model where you do a live setup. So you're broadcasting live, but you use something like Ecamm or Wirecast or OBS or whatever, and do part of your service live and then part of it pre-recorded. And the nice thing about that is that you hit play on your video and you get to have everything be perfect. Your graphics are set, your edit is wonderful, your lighting is spectacular, and all of that. Of course, you still have to contend with those three issues, but there are advantages, I think, to every one of those different options: the live stream, the pre-recorded, and the hybrid model. And I know some folks haven't considered all three of those things, but I've been throwing it out there for folks to consider. And again, I think there's upsides and downsides for all three of those.
The hybrid model is actually kind of cool and something I'd never even thought of, because essentially, like Wirecast, it's called Live Stream Studio. It's essentially the same thing as Wirecast. Just, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, it's a little bit better. But
hey, I'm a huge Vimeo fan. I keep all my stuff on Vimeo.
So, you could have, that's really cool. So you could have like the pre-recorded worship service, and then you could have either the webcam or like a camera as a source, and have the pastor actually preach a sermon live and just have canned, that'd be really cool. That'd actually be a really neat way of doing it. I never thought about hybrid in it. That's cool.
Well, the upside of that too is that, you can come on and be like, hey, good morning, welcome to worship. I see that Carl is with us, and Jessica and Justin. Hey, we're so glad to see you with us. Hey, we've got a message today that is really going to help you deal with what's happening in your life this week. So I'm going to pass it over to Pastor Joe, and he'll take it from here. Go ahead, whatever. And then I hit play. And so you can actually interact with the people in the moment, so it still feels live, even though it's pre-recorded, and you get to take advantage of all of the pre-production stuff that you've done.
It does not, your couple of things that you were talking about, the upload and the download, doesn't really change that, because you still need to live stream. So I guess the delivery model would still be a live stream scenario.
Yes.
But the content packaging can be both in the moment and pre-recorded.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, you can't eliminate those, but
yeah. Anybody else want to speak to those things? Questions? All right, so let's I'll kind of move on to the next topic, and that is member and guest follow-up. So on our podcast today, we were trying to get him in here, but he had a meeting that he needed to be at. Is Tyler Smith from Text in Church, and I thought this would be beneficial. So if you want to know more about these things, I would love for you to listen to the podcast today, because he really drills into all these. But I thought I'd give you a few strategies for member and guest follow-up, and then we can ask questions and talk about it. So the three things that he talked about is strategy number one is the online attendance bump, and what they're seeing they work with like thousands and thousands of churches. So one thing that they're seeing is if you send 2 text messages at the right time leading up to your service, it bumps your online attendance up by 10 to 15%. So I think the right times were Thursday night, and I want to say like 3 hours before the broadcast, something like that. So if you hit them with hey, can't wait for you to join us on Sunday, so-and-so, on Thursday night. And then on Sunday morning, you say, hey, we're going live in 3 hours. Here's the link. Just something real short and sweet. And they've seen churches' attendance go up by 10-15%. So that might be something that you could try. Strategy number 2 is to gather your attendees' contact information. So use a tool like a digital connection card, something like that, to gather your contact information. Does anybody use that, a digital connection card of any type? You guys want to talk about that? Is it Samuel? I'm sorry. Forgive me. I don't know your name, man.
Yeah, Sam.
Sam. Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm from a church from Dubai called Church for All Nations. And we used to have a digital connection card. We have a card which is from Planning Center. So we have a form there, and we use the online platform. And the online platform is launched the last week at the Moments. So we connect the Moments with the card that whenever the newcomers, pastor's been announcing about the welcoming newcomers. So that time we just throw the card and push the card, and even right before the service when the countdown is going on, we push the card. Even after the message someone gets over, so again during the last countdown timer, we push the card.
Awesome. What all does your card include? What information do you gather?
We do not ask more information. We have a first name, last name, and a mobile number, and the email ID, and how are they getting got to know about the church through a live stream, or then we will ask what the best time to contact them, and if they want to share anything else. So we are very much limited. The more field that you have, the people will tend to not to fill up the form. So the minimum.
Good. Yeah, so that's one thing that Tyler suggested, is the less information, the better. And so you nailed it. So first name, last name, email, and phone is what Tyler suggests.
And we
also, Tyler also. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Earlier we do not have the option that when is the right time to call. So what happens that when we call them, they will not pick up the call, and we call them again, they will not be able to answer the call, because sometimes they might be working in a night shift or the day shifts. We don't know the exact time when they're free. Probably someone will be free only the weekdays or weekends. So we ask this question like, when is the best time to call? So they just have to click the button. So we exactly call them at that particular time. If we miss the call, we just send them a text message that, we try to reach you. We will send them an email.
Jason, what do you have?
Tyler recorded a little 2-minute piece for my webinar too, and he shared in the webinar the idea of, and I don't know if you all know about Text in Church, but they presently have a free 60-day trial that doesn't cost anything for that 60 days. But he talked about the idea of saying to your guest, if you're new here, just text the word new to, and then that number, and it'll send them a little digital connect card that you don't even have to build a page for it or whatever. The other thing he mentioned when we chatted was that he said, be careful about not sending it out like 10 minutes before your worship, because the service takes a little while to get through all of the numbers. And you may have people that get that. He said, I would recommend at least 30 minutes prior. Hour or more is going to be better. But if you send those texts right before worship, you may end up having people get it after your worship is over. I would also just suggest, I've seen some pastors doing this, and I think the text is a great idea, but also doing a Facebook Live 20 minutes prior to, 10 minutes prior to, 15, whatever, just to say, hey, we're going to worship in about 10 minutes. So gather your family around the TV, join us at this link, but give them a little pre-warning, because even if you're premiering your worship or pre-recording it, a live, hey, we're going to meet for worship in an hour, makes a big difference in engagement.
Yeah, good point.
I've also seen on some of the church app, built like custom church apps or whatever, you can actually send push notifications to people's iPhones, I guess any kind of phone, but that's been a really cool thing. I used to do that every Sunday morning. Our services were at, 9:30 and 11, and at 9:25, I'd send a ping to everybody's iPhone, hope you're on the way to church, or something funny like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
We
Yeah,
would so we offered kind of two stages of check-in. So we use a church database system called Church Teams, which is very mobile, number based, and so literally people yesterday to check in could text the word check. It would already recognize who they were, what family they were in. They would get a link back. They can I mean, it is so simple, so quick. So that was really good. That then has to go to a page, and we created another text keyword called next, meaning next steps. And so on there's an opportunity for people to submit prayer requests, salvation, baptism, recommitment, anything like that. But one thing that we did Sunday that I thought was really good was, because this is our second week to use the Next platform, which was a response card. Our problem was we only really unveiled that in about the last 5 minutes of the sermon. So, there's this whole service that's going on. So we just did an overlay on our entire service and we connected spiritual decisions with prayer, because we felt like people that are watching say, oh, I need prayer, or I have a prayer request. Well, that gets them into the process. They can then select in any number of those, I need to make a spiritual decision. So our upper left-hand corner, just kind of, really transparent, but very clear, something where people could text that word throughout the service. So that was something that we felt like was a win for us, to give people an opportunity to respond throughout the service, not just the last 5 minutes.
This may be a total no-brainer, but I saw last weekend with Saddleback, or 2 weekends ago, they have, along with their video, the link to their Connect card and their digital giving all posted at the same time, so that if you see their feed, you see all that. Maybe you all are doing that, and that's a no-brainer, but I thought I'd mention it if you hadn't seen that.
How many of you guys are actually doing some sort of overlay with that info? Because honestly, I haven't thought of it until just now to do that. Is that weird, or is that normal?
I don't think it's normal at all. I think to
Ours
put
was
an overlay
really
or a lower
small.
third in your pre-record.
So it's just like a little white transparent box with text, nothing super fancy.
That's all it was. I can send you a screenshot. Just a really, I mean, it was so simple, but it just made it so that was always present.
And I saw Passion this week had a really, really thin lower third scrolling. Like, you can get complicated then too, where the whole time it was like, if you want to connect with a pastor, here's the number. And it was kind of like scrolling on the bottom of your screen. So you can get as complicated or as easy as you want it to be. But you can make it look the way you guys want.
Yeah.
Our difficulty is we use lower thirds for sermon graphics and for worship graphics. And so if that was, so the upper, honestly, for us, the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there might have been 1 or 2 times in the entire service that were like, that could have gone away for that one instant, but it didn't matter, honestly.
Justin, you want to talk about that? Your overlay?
Yeah, there's a company, and I'll shout them out maybe next week, because I may try to pull one of them in. But they're doing like a clickable overlay. I know there's a couple companies that kind of do this, but you essentially send your video from whatever streaming provider you have to their service, and then they send it out, and it's almost like an overlay in the player, not necessarily an overlay in the video. And it's a clickable link. So it's like give now, and you can actually click that. So they're creating these clickable overlays in the player, and they gave me a demo on it last week. I haven't gotten to download and use it yet. So I'm not going to like send it out there as like, hey, this is affirmed and awesome. But the demo they gave me was ridiculous. It was really, really cool. Like, hey, our new mobile app, download it, and people on their iPhones just click it, and it just drops them straight into the App Store. So really, really cool stuff. But as I get more info on that, I'll definitely share it. But be looking for that. It's pretty cool.
I think worst case scenario, you can put lower thirds in your pre-record video to, give now or digital connection card or whatever. And then if you want to put it in the top or do a linkable, I mean, I think all 3 of those are viable options.
Vimeo does have the clickable links on replay videos, so we've dropped some things in there before.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So let me go back. Strategy number 1 was the online attendance bump. Strategy 2 was gather your attendees' contact info through a connection card or something like that. And 3 was live stream guest follow up. So the 4 different ways that Tyler was suggesting to follow up is text messaging. And the stats on text are like astronomical, through the roof, better connection than literally about any other platform or any other method. So the others that he mentioned are email, phone calls, Facebook messaging, things like that. But the stats on text message are crazy good. So maybe let me ask the question: how are you using your connection card, or how are you using those methods to follow up with your members and your guests each week? What does that look like for you? How are you using that information?
I'll jump in. So this isn't necessarily my role, but our ministry's pastor, one of the things that we're asking people to do when we start the stream and do our welcome is, hey, if you're new here, like it, comment, let us know you're new. And then he'll follow up with and look at the people that have viewed, liked, commented. And if they're not part of our church, he'll Facebook message them. He'll invite them to like our page. And he'll, kind of quasi Facebook stalk them, I guess, to kind of get to know them and try to connect with them a little bit. I mean, we've seen a lot of new page likes here in the past couple of weeks doing that as well. So that's kind of a cool thing for us. As far as like the texting service, we do use text in church. And one of the things that we do is at those key moments, whether it's the giving time or what we call our VIPs, our new, the people that are new to our church, I basically have taken what we normally would use in a live gathering, our full screen graphics, and just made a lower third, like a 250 pixel height version of that. Just saying, hey, if new here, text this number. Text specifically, like we've created like phrases, like so that we'll know exactly if we get a text message from somebody, if it says VIP, they're new to our church, we need to get them plugged in. If we've got a response graphic coming out of the sermon that just says text respond to this number, and if they text that, then we know that they need, like what somebody was saying, they need prayer, they want to make a decision, they want to follow up on baptism. And so that's kind of what we're doing. And I don't know all the metrics with it. Those are just kind of our steps right now. And like I said, I know for a fact we've seen a good handful of new page likes over the past couple of weeks since we've started pre-record and premiering. And but there's my 2 cents.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So let's move on to the next topic, and that is music licensing for your live stream. Is there anybody and this is probably a topic that you guys have probably solved by now, but I still want to kind of bring it up. Have you had any copyright questions, any music licensing questions? What can we do? What can't we do? That sort of thing. Jason, do you want to speak to what you're talking about in the webinar on this topic?
I can certainly say a bit, but I'm far from a copyright expert.
Yeah, me neither.
There are three basic licenses that you have to have. Most of us already have the CVLI or CCLI license to do live lyrics on the screen in worship. And of course, when you broadcast that, you have to have the CVLI or the broadcast license. I work with a lot of mainline churches that are using hymnals and things, and a lot of what's in CCLI does not cover hymns, so you have to have another license called the One Church license, onechurchlicense.net or onelicense.net, I think. And then there's Church Copyright Solutions that can help with further licensing. But I think a lot of people assume that if they just have CCLI, they're covered for everything. And some don't realize that you have to have another license on top of that to broadcast live. I was telling Carl earlier that years ago I was speaking at a national conference, and a guy who was a media volunteer at his church came to a workshop I was leading and told me that he had just been to he was a lawyer by career, but a volunteer at his church. Told me that he had just come back from a workshop where they were learning about how to defend churches on copyright law. And the person leading that workshop said that he was just defending a church that had $40,000 in violations for showing movie clips that they did not have the right to show, broadcasting those. And it's $10,000 per violation. So, I've been recommending to all the churches that I'm working with that they double check that the songs they're singing are actually covered under that license, because sometimes there are songs that you think are covered that are not covered. So you either have to change your song sets up or get the proper license if you're playing stuff that you aren't covered for. So I would imagine most of you have that figured out, but you don't want to take a chance with that. In addition to all that, I also think there's an ethical question that we have to ask. Of course, we want to stay out of legal trouble, but I also think that we have to be careful. We also have to consider the artists who have created these songs, the people who have created the graphics, the videos, those licenses that people pay for. There are residuals and things that come back to the artist. So it's not a victimless crime to play a video clip or show a graphic or perform a song or whatever without paying for a license, because there are people that's how they make their living. So I think we have to be above reproach on this when it comes to being the church.
Anybody else want to speak to that?
Agreed.
Yep.
Cool.
I'll just say, have we gotten hit? So one of the things that we have all of the streaming licenses, and so we're very well structured there, but we still have gotten hit a number of times on Facebook, particularly because we use multi-tracks. So it sounds, just in analyzing the sound, it sounds like it's just a straight public playing of a private piece of material. So and we've always had to be very diligent about challenging that when it does come up. Is there anything that can be done maybe prior to, or is it just deal with it when it comes?
I think streaming, it's always been making your website and your embedded player on your website your main destination, and letting your social media just be your second and third destination for streaming. You don't want your congregation streaming on Facebook or on YouTube anyway. And this is just an opinion, it's not a fact, but it's just not a good place to watch a church service. It's just not. You want them on your website, and you don't have to mess with those issues. And really, there's no one in Facebook on a Sunday when you have these issues that you can call. So I don't know. My recommendation always is to get people. It's a great way to grab people and to go out and get them. But your embedded player on your website's the way to roll.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, Justin. And the stats are crazy. I've been looking for the article and I can't re-find it, but people only stay in tune on Facebook for like, a minute or two. And then YouTube, it goes up because there's less stuff to click on, but a dedicated page, it jumps up like 20 or 30 or 40%. The upside of having it on a dedicated page is also that if you want to have some kind of a downloadable worship folder or bulletin or print piece or whatever, you can have people download that and be able to participate, and they'll actually hang with you longer if they can see the sermon notes or whatever is a part of that. So I think you're right that if we look at those other venues as ways to draw people in who are not part of our community, the other upside is that you can tell people every week, visit archchurch.com/live worship, and they don't have to look for the link every time. They can go right to that dedicated link and come back to it again and again and again. So I'm advocating the same thing. I think, the problem with Facebook is every time I go to watch a video on Facebook, somebody pops up in Messenger and says, "Hey, Jason, how you doing this morning?" And now I'm not watching worship. I'm talking about what I had for breakfast or whatever. Or somebody posts a funny cat video and I'm watching that all of a sudden, and I'm not, dedicated means that you get to own the space. So I think every church ought to be considering that as the primary delivery system.
I agree. So we talked about this, I think, in our first roundtable about a month ago. And then also I did an interview with the guys at Living as One, and we talked through the numbers of how long people stay on Facebook, how long people stay on YouTube, how long people stay on your dedicated page. So Living as One told me the very same thing. And also a guy named Kevin Hurdle at freeonlinechurch.com. We did a podcast with both of those guys, and they both said the same thing. And so freeonlinechurch.com is a place that if you can't do it on your website, you can actually embed your Facebook or YouTube into freeonlinechurch.com, and it makes a dedicated page for you. But I would say if you can stream directly to your website using a Vimeo or something like that, then that's the best route, and use Facebook and YouTube as secondary. So yeah, I agree with that too. All right, so let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about online service flow just for a minute. Do you guys have any questions on, or maybe the well's kind of dry on ideas for service flow? Is there anything that we can talk about there to kind of enhance things that you can add to or do different in your services? Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, we tried something a little different this week just to keep people engaged. We did pretty much the normal service flow, but we do like 5 minutes of message, then a song, then 5 minutes of a message from another campus pastor that relates to the same message, but just another point, then another song, then another 5 minutes, just to kind of mix it up and keep people engaged.
Did it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it did. Our engagement was, the graph show pretty steady the entire time. So I'd consider that a win. And I personally just like the format. So
yeah. Hey, Dan Griffin, do you want to speak to this at all with Mount Horeb or another church that you might have seen? I don't know if Dan's available. His screen is locked. Carlos or Dave, you guys want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, one of the things and I'm actually Dan Glenn's worship pastor. He invited me up here this week.
Awesome.
One of the things that we try to do, because we noticed on Easter that we were getting to the point at about 55 minutes into the service where we had just major drop off, and Dan still had some points in the sermon to say, is that we really try to make the benchmark at less than an hour for our entire process from start to finish. And it's funny because Dan and I were having the conversation. I'm like, hey, you can still have this much time of preaching. And I won't say how much time of preaching it is, because a lot of other churches will say, man, that's a lot of preaching. But we went ahead and tried to cut it down. And when we looked at the numbers this week, at least on a couple of our formats, we stayed at peak throughout the entire service. So it's trying to find that number, that amount of time that is necessary for you to be able to keep your audience. And we think that for us, it was 1 hour.
How about you other guys? How long is your service? An hour?
We've been trying to keep ours an hour to 50 minutes.
Yeah, I think Easter was a little bit longer for us. I think we hit like 55, 58, somewhere in there. But this past week was right at or just under 50 minutes, which is really short for us. Normally we go an hour and 15, hour and 20 in person. So we're overcoming a challenge there. So
yeah, we've kind of done something pretty similar too, where we normally, like, we can go hour 15, hour and a half in the room, but even with like a 5 minute like pre-countdown virtual lobby, that kind of a thing, we're under an hour. And we've just tried to keep things pretty simple. We have a welcome on the front. We do 3 songs of worship and there's a message. Our pastor has really kind of figured out some sermon illustrations that are like really dedicated to video. He did one where he was talking about like keeping things in focus, and he used the idea of like portrait mode on your phone, where when there's a deal on your phone where you can everything else in the background kind of fades away and you just focus on the face. And we were able to do some things in post where it kind of mimicked portrait mode. He did some other things for like kids ministry, where he's talking about you put on these different colored lens glasses and it changes the color. Well, when you put the glasses on, we change the color of the screen to like this blue tint, and so he's really figured out how to do sermon illustrations that are very specific to video, and that's been super cool and engaging.
That's a really neat idea, man. Especially for kids, kids worship and stuff like that.
That's exactly what it was. He started his message and he said, "Okay, we're gonna preach in Ephesians 2, but I want to do something just for the kids." He even did the little illustration where about your words, and you take a tube of toothpaste and you squeeze it all the way out, and then someone asks you to put it all back in, and you obviously can't. And it's like, that's like your words. And so it was kind of neat because we saw a lot of pictures from our members that just kind of said, hey, that really reached the kids. Like there's like one picture of this kid like literally up against the TV like this, and it was just cool to see like the fruit of that.
That's really neat. That's great ideas.
My pastor a couple weeks ago was telling the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he said, "Now every time I say this, I want you to bang on pots and pans or make noise." And so my kids were more excited about worship than they had been in a long time, watching it with us on TV. And so all throughout worship, they stayed for the entire message. And every time he'd say that phrase, so I've been telling people low tech, you can do some things that are just at your home when you hear me say, this or that or whatever. There's also a website, excuse me, called Mentimeter.com that will let you take Menti polls in real time. So you can put a poll up and people can, with their phone, they just dial in a number or whatever. And one church I was working with did that, and they had all of their congregation partake in this poll, and everybody said they felt such a connection because they could see their congregation all at that time reacting to whatever it was the pastor was saying in that moment. So I think interactive is really helpful. Text a prayer, put something in the chat, and talk about it in real time. Makes everybody feel like they're still kind of gathered in not physically, but
Yeah.
we're all in this thing together.
Cool. Yeah. Can you put that link in the chat for us?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So as we close today, let's ask the big question. What's next? What's the plan for Reopen? Have you guys, the leadership at your church, had that discussion, and how's it gone, and what's going on with that?
I think we're getting ready to kind of start that dialogue, but for us, we're based in New Orleans, and so we're probably still a month and a half away from that. So we'll see what happens. I don't know where all of you are, but it's been interesting down here. So
yeah, the governor in Georgia is supposed to speak today, I think at 4. So I think we'll know more then. We're just kind of abiding by what he says.
So Jason and I were talking earlier that I've been kind of against drive-in church a little bit, or kind of just hesitant about it. But it's interesting. I've kind of not really shifted gears on it, but I'm thinking like, okay, now's the time to start having that conversation, maybe. So maybe it's a step to moving back in. So if we do, if we're all online, then maybe a step is drive in, then maybe do some type of hybrid, and then kind of full in. So I don't know where that sits, but or who else? What's your leadership talked about?
That's a good point, Carl. I hadn't thought of that before, because I'm wondering, like, maybe we're able to open up with, just 100 people, but are we going to do 10 services over the weekend? So like maybe a drive-in might be a good stuff. Yeah.
Dan, what you got?
A couple of things. First of all, we had a Zoom meeting with our staff last week, and we recorded it, where we just talked about this topic. And honestly, we talked about the confusion around it. We talked about, well, we just don't know. We don't know about this. We don't know about that. Here are the things that we do know. Here are the things that we don't know. And we publicized that for our church family to watch. And we've gotten a lot of traction off of that, just from the perspective of our church family being able to say, okay, we see that y'all are talking about it. And so that's just an encouragement. It was probably a little more transparent than because we said some things there that were difficult, but it just allowed our church to see, oh, they're struggling with it. However, in thinking about the potential, we're in Florida, so we're probably a good ways away as well. That whole thing that, it doesn't like heat. Well, Miami and South Florida are really hot spots. So I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless of that, I could see us potentially, I think probably a first step for us is probably to do an invite only live stream recording. And so that way there's a small group of people that can come. We're still going to focus on the camera. We're still going to focus on the live stream mindset, but it allows a small group of people to gather. We would probably do it by, a registration link, almost a ticketed type of event or something like that. But just, there are some people that are so hungry to come back. But I think, in a room like ours, if we were to have 50 people and that was our service, it would be really, really hard to worship in that room. But if we say, oh, this is really just it's a taping of our online worship service, you just happen to get to be here, I think it's a bridge opportunity. So it's just kind of a way for us to move forward.
That's a great idea. It's a great idea, Dan. Hey, Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question for all who have gone for a simulator live. So how is your transition between the worship to the sermon? Do you guys have any sermon opener video, or you just black out and you just get into the worship, into the sermon? Like, I just any inputs?
We're still doing a bumper video transition between the studio hosts and what happens on stage. And then all of the camera shots on stage are really tight, so you can't really tell that it's an empty room.
The amazing folks at 1230 Media made our bumper videos.
+1 for 1230.
About to say, there's a guy in here that can build it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam, I would say a couple of different things. If you want to try a bumper video, whether that's a pre-made piece or a custom piece, or even just like a motion graphics transition would work. So if you're at worship and then you do like a motion graphics wipe and it goes right to your sermon, to your pastor, I think that's a fine transition too.
I'm working with a really low tech church that doesn't have the capability of doing any of this. And he's printed out some graphics that he puts in front of the camera in between the guitar player, like they're in the same place, and they don't have any real technology. So they've gone to like Kinko's FedEx and made some really nice looking graphics, and they're actually putting that in front of and then pulling it off, and so whatever works.
They're happy
it works for Jimmy Fallon.
Like
it does work.
Show,
yeah.
Kind of like the football call signs on the sideline.
There you go. I actually show a little clip from Fallon in my webinar, and I talk about the idea that slick is not nearly as important as authenticity right now. Authentic matters more than slick. And for some of you who are doing really high-end production, that is authentically who you are. But some of these churches, that is not authentically who they are. So even something simple like, one pastor that I worked with actually took one of those flip charts and printed out graphics for their giving to say text give to this number. And I was applauding him. It was very simple, but it was effective. It was authentic to who that church is.
And yeah, speaking of the Tonight Show, he has his kids write, it looks like his kids write out websites that he just puts it up on the, and now there's still a lower third up there, but yeah, authenticity is the way to go.
All right. Yeah, Sam, I would just also echo too, like, don't just use a bumper just to use a bumper, like what we're saying. It's find something that actually is meaningful. And if it's not, my church is not doing a bumper, but they're cutting away to a pastor talking about time of giving as like a transition. So like you can cut away to someone else doing some sort of piece or prepping the message and then go back to your pastor. So if that's a better fit, you might do something like that too.
Yeah. It's a great question, Sam. It's really good.
Is that the worship pastor comes in, he takes for the welcome, the newcomers, on the online viewers, then he takes to the offerings, giving, then he takes to get to the sermon. But throughout the video, worship, we have a worship team, which is 3 or 4 members because we have a lockdown. So we don't have the full band is on the, on the worship teams. And after that, you're going to see the pastor for next 40 minutes or 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depends. So just because for Easter, we did some Easter openers. So it was like, we get a lot of good feedback, it changed the entire moment. The worship, it took over the transit. Just a nice transition. So I'm just checking. Like,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right. As we close today, is there anybody else that wants to talk about what's next or where you're moving? Dan Griffin, I know that you bounced out a little bit. You want to talk about maybe conversations about Horeb's had or any of the churches that you've seen?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I froze up. I started feeling Presbyterian there. Sorry. Yeah, most of the churches. Thank you for a few smiles there, Steve Dirks. I appreciate it.
I can mute you if you say something too bad.
I know. I mean, you're very capable hands, my friend. It's going to be difficult to we're phasing everything else in. It's going to be difficult to phase this in, and so, there's a church that we've had some exposure to in the Atlanta area. I mean, they're projecting they're not going to be in a group large setting until August at the earliest. So, one of the conversations that I've been having, for you guys, your context, my wife's director of traditional worship at Mount Horeb Methodist here in Lexington. Get used to this for now, and how do we do it well? How do we do it to meet your desired outcomes? So I think we got a lot longer to go on this. I know everybody's itching to get back, but it's just I think that you're going to take a major PR hit if you do this too soon. I would just really, I work primarily in the secular world, guys. I don't know if you noticed, but there's some companies that are giving back their PPP money because they're taking such a huge PR hit because they're a multi-million, billion-dollar company that got the money and the companies that need it didn't. So they're giving the money back. So just something to be aware of. Don't come back too soon. You could pay a high price for it.
And I would just like to add to that the way that we broadcast our worship is also so important, because I see a lot of churches that are not practicing social distancing on their feeds. And you may know that those two people are husband and wife, or that's a family doing music together or whatever, but your viewers don't know that. And so I feel like sometimes what I've been seeing sometimes when I scroll through a feed on Sunday morning is you've got two people that are this close to each other, and I feel like I want to turn it off because those people are making me nervous. They're too close to each other. So I think it's really important that we are practicing that social distancing and leading the charge on this. I saw what you were talking about. Shake Shack today said they were going to give back all their money as well. So I think this is an opportunity for the church to lead.
Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, me and our executive pastor, when we were recording the welcome time last week, just had a kind of conversation just off the cuff. And one of the things that I brought up, he's talking like, yeah, we may phase this in slowly and bring back people here and there. But the question that I thought of is, say they lift some of these restrictions and we can have 100 people in a room. If our people are still nervous and worried about that, are we shepherding them well to encourage them to come back? And so how do we manage that? Yes, we can have in-person gatherings, but still gear them towards online. So those kinds of the conversations we have, in which somebody mentioned that. But again, the biggest question I just wanted to encourage us all to think about is not so much can we, should we, but as leaders of churches, how can we best shepherd and lead our people through this opening back up? And that's just kind of the thing that really popped into my mind. So,
and I think it's so important, like that whole idea of shepherding the people. Because, we do have a bunch of restless people that do want to gather and they want to come back. In fact, I had some of the orchestra members at our church texting me yesterday, and he's like, hey, man, can we have an outdoor rehearsal? And I'm like, we can't, because that would be considered a gathering, and it's in our campus, and we got to be really sensitive. And when I mentioned all that to him, he was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I understand that. We're just hungry and ready to get back.
That's the oops, I locked up.
somebody, Kenneth, was that you, man?
No, but I actually was going to ask a question for you guys on a different topic. So I'm representing a ministry that is international. We have a lot of people on Facebook, a couple thousand, and we always go live. And I'm hearing that when we go on a website, it'll have higher engagement. So my question is, what would be a good idea to transition our audience from Facebook to a website?
Somebody want to speak to that?
I don't have a proven method, but based on what I just heard here, I'm gonna ask the staff member that is monitoring and moderating our Facebook chat to basically continually say, hey, this is great, but it's even better over there. Just to continue to put that link out and try to get people off of Facebook and onto, we use Church Online, so that's probably the one, because that's probably where we will send them. But yeah, that's not been something that I've even thought about, but it makes all the sense in the world of getting them off of Facebook and onto a dedicated site. And I realize that happens organically, but I mean, for every click, that's one more person that's going to stay with you for that much longer.
I think it can be in your spoken comments too. You know, hey, good morning. If you're just joining us, we're so glad you're here. And whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, doesn't matter, but we'd also love to see you at nameofourchurch.com/live worship. And if you join us there, we've got some extras for you, because you can do the downloadable, you know, participant guide, whatever you call that in your church. Yeah, I'm from the United Methodist Church, so we call it a bulletin or whatever. But think about, are there some incentives you can give people to, if they join you at that space? You're not getting the complete experience if you're joining us on those places, but if you join us here, we've got some extras for you, you know.
Right. You can do giveaways, or like we talked about earlier, or something like that to push them over there. And also you can maybe connect to your mission. Like, hey, we're giving back. I want you to go to our website and click on this button. Or to give online today, I want you to go to our website and go to this button. Or to check out our kids service. Like, push it in the comments and in your spoken video. That might give you some ideas. Kenneth, did that help you?
Yes, sir. That did help a lot. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, I've got a quick question on that too. So I hear everybody saying push to the website, right? But in watching all of our stats, most of our families are watching in the living room on a television, which are not website friendly. So I'm wondering if the stats that we're seeing, at least on our church, the stats we're seeing for engagement on website was the norm maybe 2 months ago. But I'm wondering right now if that's the best thing for me to push them to, because everyone's watching on their phone or their TV in their living room. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm interested in more of the app side, because we have actually found people will watch on YouTube on their TV and they comment on Facebook.
That's an interesting thought. And we work a lot with Seeds Family Worship, and we do their online kid service, and they're exclusively Facebook. And so my family will gather in the living room on Apple TV and go to Facebook Watch, pull it up from there and watch the whole thing. So yes, I mean, I can go either way. You don't necessarily have to push people to. I think it might depend on your community and where your people are most engaging. Honestly, I get the most engagement from my personal Facebook page. That's me personally and through our ministry. So that's where I kind of gravitate. So yeah, I mean,
I get the arguments to switch to website. Yeah, switching to website is great. I do think you do get that longer retention times, but it's hard getting people to transition if I can't actually give them a real all-in-one experience on a website, especially when they're watching on television.
Dave, did you want to speak to that?
That was me saying I agree.
Yeah.
Because at least for us, and maybe our focus is we're just trying to take care of our people, and we're seeing other people coming from the outside, and we've got some things in place to make that a thing as far as how do we follow up with them and all that. But we're just trying to take care of our people, and our thought was, okay, well, where are these people? Well, we know that we have a huge engagement on our Facebook page, and so we know we have a lot of people there. But we also know that you want to throw it up on your TV, especially like with even an older generation Apple TV. You got a YouTube app, and so for us, and also knowing that Facebook, we've been doing the Facebook premiere, and the Facebook premiere has been kind of hit and miss, but YouTube has been rock solid pretty much every time we've used it. So we generally have a peak on YouTube of maybe 150, and we have a peak of about 60 or 75 on Facebook. And I'll watch it, and it stays pretty steady. I know that the normal numbers on social media, and I do YouTube and all that kind of stuff, like I know all the normal things. I just wonder if like this time's a little unique, and that, you know, normally people, you know, they would much rather meet in a room and be with their people, but they can't. And so the only other option is to gather everyone in the family. And so I'm wondering if some of the, like I've had to kind of put some of those, the things that I know about watch times and audience retention and all that a little bit off to the side, because I feel like to some degree what we're dealing with is unique to this specific situation.
Man, at the end of the day,
another thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
going to say another thing you might consider is creating what I would call a dual screen experience too, where you invite them to a live, they watch it on their Apple TV, but come to the website where you can download the participant guide or the bulletin or the worship folder or whatever. So you're still trying to get them connected to you in a way that is meaningful. I think about, I'm a fan of The Walking Dead. You know, there's The Talking Dead where you can watch the show, and if you have your iPad in front of you, you know, you get to participate in the polls and all that. So maybe there's a way that you can drive interaction that's a both and. And I certainly wouldn't say drive them to your website to the exclusion of the other things. I just think that if you have that in addition to, it can be very helpful.
Right.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, be everywhere, you know, like, and to clarify, like earlier, I was driving home the point of like that's the best place for your core of your church, but you still have to be everywhere, because if we look at what we all know 75% of internet video traffic is, which is obviously something we're all fighting against, that content's everywhere. It's on mobile, it's on your TV, it's on your Roku, it's on your website, it's everywhere. So the church needs to do what it can to simulcast and be everywhere. You know, if someone wants to watch it in the middle of the jungle on an Android, they should be able to watch it just as much as somebody who wants to watch on the couch at home. So that's always been my thing, be everywhere you can be.
Somebody mentioned the resource earlier, restream.io, that lets you go to multiple platforms all at once. So feel free to check that out too. All right, we're going to wrap today. Steve's going to, Sam, you got one more thing? Go for it, man.
Yeah, I have one more question that in terms of when we go on a live, the chat host, we face some issues that, you know, when the time of pastor is preaching, that, you know, that's a time of attention, you know, we are focusing on the message. So how is your chat engagement going on during that time? So if somebody's just getting in and they say something, is the chat host going to get engaged them? Maybe probably somebody celebrating a birthday, they say happy birthday, then the entire chain of birthday things are going on, or some other sort of things are coming up during your chat window. So the question is, like, during the moment, like when you're focused on the sermon, is your chat window is more engaged, or how is your take?
I think that you have, if it's a pre-recorded message, I don't see anything wrong with having the actual pastor that is doing the sermon or your other pastors in the chat at the same time to engage with your audience while the message is going on. Hey, did you guys miss that scripture reference? I'm in John 3:16. Hey, did you guys miss this? Man, I can't believe that God showed me this through blah, blah, blah. I would have that pastor in the chat, as well as your multiple pastors, any pastors in the comments that you can have. I think that would be great.
And we talked about this a moment ago, but this gives us the opportunity to go from monologue to dialogue. So it's not just one person talking to everybody, but now we can dialogue about what we're talking about, and there's great opportunity in that.
Yeah, and your pastor, during his message, if you're pre-recorded or live stream, either one, you can say, hey, guys, put this in the chat. I'll be in there while this is going on. I'm throwing out a question. You guys answer this in the chat, and I'll talk with you as we continue. Something like that. So it's a good place for interaction.
Yeah, one of the cool things we had, one of our pastors puts in like the main points and quotes and stuff, but then the pastor that's been doing the preaching since we started pre-recording has been able to jump in and kind of give some additional commentary and stuff that like God was speaking to him, some of his favorite features of this passage, why maybe he went a direction he did with a point or an illustration. And I think that's been really cool. People getting a little bit of insight to the background behind the sermon and what God's speaking to him about. So that's something to do too.
Sam, where are you located again? Dubai?
I'm in Dubai.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for joining us today. I know last week we had several international folks, so thanks for coming back, man. Really appreciate you. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up today, and Steve's going to pray us out. I put my email and phone number in the chat, so you guys feel free to reach out to me or Steve or our team or each other. I appreciate you guys in the discussion, and feel free to reach out if you need anything. Steve, you want to pray us out?
Let me do it. God, I just thank you for all the people, all the opportunity that we have to serve at this time and this place and in your church. And so, God, I just pray for each of us in our roles that we would be empowered and strengthened to do and to serve well. That, God, you would give us opportunity to have greater impact, not for ourselves, but for your kingdom. That, God, you would work powerfully in our churches to continue to bring people from death to life. Because, God, we serve a God who's powerful and who's over this. This hasn't surprised you, and so we're thankful that COVID can't stop you. Nothing can stop you. What we celebrated, Easter, the resurrection, still holds true and continues to hold true in each of our lives. God, thank you for these people here with us and people online. Pray they have a good week, and that, God, this next Sunday would be another awesome opportunity for you to impact the people in our churches. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Love you guys. Thank you for hanging out. And feel free to reach out if you need anything. Thanks a lot.
Carl.
Have a good week, guys.